control process is a three-step process of measuring actual performance, comparing actual performance against a standard, and taking managerial action to correct deviations or to address inadequate standards. The control process assumes that performance standards already exist, and they do. They are the specific goals created during the planning process. Now, let's talk about the detailed control process. Step 1 is measuring actual performance. To determine what actual performance is, a manager must first get information about it. Thus, the first step in control is measuring. So, how we measure? There are 5 approaches used by managers to measure and report actual performance are personal observations, statistical reports, self-monitoring computers, oral reports, and written reports. Most managers use a combination of these approaches. What is measured is probably more critical to the control process than how it's measured. Why? Because selecting the wrong criteria can create serious problems. Besides, what is measured often determines what employees will do. What control criteria might managers use? Some control criteria can be used for any management situation. For instance, all managers deal with people, so criteria such as employee satisfaction or turnover rates can be measured. Keeping costs within budget is also a fairly common control measure. Other control criteria should recognize the different activities that managers supervise. Most work activities can be expressed in quantifiable terms. However, managers should use subjective measures when they count. Although such measures may have limitations, they are better than having no standards at all and doing no controlling. Step 2 is comparing actual performance against the standard. The comparing step determines the variation between actual performance and the standard. Although some variation in performance can be expected in all activities, it is critical to determine an acceptable range of variation. Deviations outside this range need attention. Managers need to ensure that actual observations fall inside the accepted range of variation. So this chart shows time period on the x-axis. It shows the values t, 1 more than t, 2 more than t, 3 more than t, 4 more than t, and 5 more than t. The y-axis shows measurement of performance. It shows 3 values: acceptable lower limit, standard, and acceptable upper limit. The acceptable lower limit and acceptable upper limit are equidistant from standard, below and above it respectively. The chart shows 3 plots showing the performance value for each point of the time period. These plots are within the acceptable lower limit and acceptable upper limit values about the standard. The line passes through the plots. The gap between acceptable lower limit and acceptable upper limit values is labeled acceptable range of variation. The third step is taking managerial action. Managers can choose among 3 possible courses of action: do nothing, correct the actual performance, or revise the standards. Because do nothing is self-explanatory, Let's look at the other two. One decision a manager must make is whether to take immediate corrective action, which corrects problems at once to get performance back on track, or to use basic corrective action, which looks at how and why performance deviated before correcting the source of deviation. It's possible that the variance was a result of an unrealistic standard, too low or too high a goal. In that situation, the standard needs the corrective action, not the performance. If performance constantly exceeds the goal, then a manager should look at whether the goal is too easy and needs to be raised. On the other hand, managers must be cautious about revising a standard downward. The exhibit summarized the decisions a manager makes in controlling the standards are goals developed during the planning process. These goals provide the basis for the control process, which involves measuring actual performance and comparing it against the standard. Depending on the results, a manager's decision is to do nothing, correct the performance, or revise the standard. The chart shows that objectives lead to standards. An arrow points from standards to measure actual performance. Standards and measure actual performance together lead to compare actual performance with standard. The map then shows three questions in sequence as follows. Is standard being attained? If the answer is yes, the map leads to do nothing and thereon to measure actual performance. If the answer is no, the map leads to the next question. Is variance acceptable? If the answer is yes, the map leads to do nothing and thereon to measure actual performance. If the answer is no, the map leads to the next question. Is standard acceptable? If the answer is yes, the map leads to identify cause of variation and thereon to correct performance, and from there to measure actual performance. If the answer is no, the map leads to revise standard before pointing to standard. So that's all of this session. Thank you.